Good morning, everybody. It's Monday morning. In fact, it's Bank Holiday Monday, and lovely to see you. Hope you've had a lovely weekend, and thank you as always for joining us for our Bible talk for today as we continue our adventure through the fabulous book of Psalms. And today we've got another very special one, Psalm 115. So here goes. Not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to your name give glory, for the sake of your steadfast love and your faithfulness. Why should the nations say, where is their God? Our God's in the heavens. He does whatever he pleases. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of human hands. They have mouths but do not speak, eyes but do not see. They have ears but do not hear, noses but do not smell. They have hands but do not feel, feet but do not walk. They make no sound in their throats. Those who make them are like them. So are all who trust in them. O Israel, trust in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. O house of Aaron, trust in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. You who fear the Lord, trust in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. The Lord has been mindful of us. He will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel. He will bless the house of Aaron. He will bless those who fear the Lord, both small and great. May the Lord give you increase, both you and your children. May you be blessed by the Lord who made heaven and earth. The heavens are the Lord's heavens, and the earth he's given to human beings. The dead do not praise the Lord, nor do any that go down into silence. But we will bless the Lord from this time forward on and forevermore. Praise the Lord. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, beautiful psalm, this one. Context-wise, we've no idea really. We don't know when it originated. Scholars have argued about this one, so I'm not going to get into that. We do know it was part of the Hillel, which is part of the 6 psalms that are said at the Passover meal. Yes, we've had 113 and 114 said before the meal, and 115, 16, 17, and 18 are said after the meal. So these are some of the words now that Jesus said after the Lord's Supper, before he went out to the Garden of Gethsemane and so on. Okay, so we don't know when it came from. We do know when it's used. It's what we call the Hillel. In terms of the structure, it's a bit of hodgepodge in lots of ways, really. It comes and goes quite a lot. For example, in the first 8 verses, they is talking about people worshipping idols. Then all of a sudden in verse 9, they are those who trust in the Lord. So you've got to kind of be on your fingertips here, really. You've got to, because as I say, it's a bit of a kind of a hodgepodge. Before all that, it's a very, very beautiful hodgepodge. But it has led some scholars to believe that early translations of the Bible had Psalm 150 starting in different places. So that's that. So how do you structure it? Well, basically, verses 1 to 8 are basically talking about God being the only God compared to other gods. Okay, so it's verses 1 to 8 are really talking about God being really the only God. Verses 9 to 11 talk about God being our help and our shield, and people should trust God, Israel, there as on, because he's their help and their shield. Then you've got verses 12 to 15 is basically saying God is a God of blessing and asking God to bless people. And verses 16 to the end is really all about the place where God is praised. Okay, so you've got verses 1 to 8 are about God being the only God. You've got verses 9 to 11 about God being trusting God because he's the help and the shield. Then you've got verses 12 to 15, God being a God of blessing. And then the end is really about the place where God is praised. So we'll take it a bit at a time. Firstly, the first 8 verses. In fact, we're going to talk about the first verse really first. Wonderful words these actually. Not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to your name give glory. Now these are actually fantastic words, and anybody actually who's in God's service or in any kind of way at all, when good things happen, this is what we should say. And over history, there's been some good examples of that. Apparently, when the British won the Battle of Agincourt, all the troops were told to get on their knees and say this. Rather than glory to us, it was not to us, O Lord, but to you, but to your name give the glory. Okay. So and apparently also William Wilberforce, who incidentally went to the same school as me, albeit 200 years before, he apparently, when the bill to abolish slavery went through, these are the words he said. The crowning his life's achievement. Not to us, O Lord, but not to us, but to your name give glory. So actually, verse 1 really tells us something very significant about everybody who is in God's work or has any kind of success in God's work at all, really. These are the words that we should say, reminding us that it's God who does the work. So Psalm 115 verse 1 is a very special one. I'll just remind you what it says. Not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to your name give glory. So that's kind of the first thing to say. Then he goes on in the next 7 verses to contrast our God with other gods. So he talks on verse 3 saying, our God's in the heavens. He does whatever he pleases. Then he goes on to contrast with the others. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of human hands. And you got the contrast between God who does what he wants and the idols who are made. Okay, so one is God who's God does what he wants. The other one is ours are idols who are made. And then there's a fair bit of taunt and there's almost a bit of sarcasm here, about these idols. They have mouths but they can't speak. They have eyes but they can't see. They have ears but they can't hear, and noses but they can't smell. And there's quite a bit of taunting humour going on here, contrasting our God who can do whatever he pleases with these idols who are basically just things that sit on the side and people trust in them but they kind of can't do them any good. And then at the end, he goes on and even more so to say, those who make them are like them. Or another translation is, those who make them become like them. In the same way that these idols are basically useless, that they can't see, they can't hear, and people that worship them are like them. And actually, in lots of ways, I think there's something very significant about today, because people put their trust in all sorts of things, don't they? People put their trust in money, people put their trust in horoscopes, all manner of strange things people put their trust in. But actually, God should be our number one. And God is the one who sits in his heavens, who is in his heavens, who does whatever he pleases. Our God is a living God, and he's the one that we should be worshipping. And actually, anybody who worships anything else, A, it won't do them any good, and B, they'll end up like it. So that's the message here. So God is the true God, as opposed to things other people can worship as well. And it's very important for us to remember that today, that God should be the one who we worship today. Then in verses 9 to 11, you've got Israel, you've got Aaron, and he says, to trust in the Lord. And the message is for us today, for them, their help and their shield. And today, God for us is our help and our shield. God's the one who helps us in our lives, the one who guides us and blesses us and strengthens us, and is also our shield, as the one who protects us too. Then in verses 15 to 18, you've then got God's blessing, and you've got the Lord will be mindful to us and he will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel. He will bless the house of Aaron. He will bless those who fear the Lord, both small and great. And as I mentioned the other day, fearing God does not mean to be terrified of God. Fearing God means to respect God and honour God and put God in God's rightful place. And actually, those who put God in his rightful place will receive God's blessing. And God will make them content, God will give them blessing in their lives. So the message for us is, whether we are small or whether we are great, to put God first. And that way, by putting God first, God will bless us. And then finally at the end, verses 16 to 18, where is God praised? The heavens are the Lord's heavens, the earth he's given to human beings. So essentially what he's saying is that, God is in heaven. God, the heavens where God reigns. But to some extent, God has delegated care of earth to humanity. A risky venture, dare I say, if ever there was one. But that's what God has done. God has kind of delegated reign of the earth to human beings. But needless to say, it's only for the duration of our time on earth. And actually, we need God's blessing to make it work well. And actually, we need to make sure that we are trusting God and doing God's will. That way, the earth will flourish to its best. But then at the end, and I think in verse 18, there's to some extent, there's almost a sort of, the last verse is almost said with a certain degree of defiance. But we will bless the Lord from this time forward and forevermore. Praise the Lord. So I think what that's saying here is whatever's going on in the earth, whatever other people may be trusting, however much of a mess the world may be in, a good, bad or ugly state it may be in, whatever other people may be doing, whatever other people may be trusting, whatever other people in our family or whatever may be doing with their lives today, actually, it says here, we will bless the Lord from this time forward and forevermore. And I think it kind of reminds us really that in our lives also, we all reach a point at some point in our lives where we've got to decide what we're going to do with our lives, really. Which side of the fence are we sitting on, actually? Are we going to bless the Lord or are we going to trust in other things? And I think there's a sense in which the psalmist is saying here, but we will bless the Lord from this time forward and forevermore. So lots to be said in here about trusting God, the only God, about remembering that when good things happen, to say, it's not to us, O Lord, but to your name give the glory. But to remember also that God's a God of blessing. But whatever may be happening in the world, whatever anybody else may be doing, however unfashionable it may be, but he says, but we will bless the Lord from this time forward and forevermore. Praise the Lord. Bless you, friends.